Hello everyone, my name is Emily and I am one of your TAs for ENG1101 this term. Today we'll be discussing the vaccine supply chain network to be able to better prepare you for your integrative project this term. Now, before we dive in, I'd like to give you all a bit of an overview. Today we'll be discussing what is supply chain. I'll give you all a simple example, and then we'll go through an example of a COVID-19 vaccine supply chain network that you'll be able to use as a reference and in your answers for this integrative project. First, let's discuss what is supply chain or what is a supply chain. In the most simple sense, it's what the company or business needs to do to get their product to the consumer or the customer. If we're going to look for a very technical definition of supply chain, it's the activity required by an organization to deliver goods and services to the consumer. Now I'd like to give you all a very simplified supply chain of a pencil. In front of us here, you can see this graphic, and we'll continue to refer back to this graphic. These are the 6 steps required in a supply chain, and I'll give you all some examples for each. So the first thing that we always start with is our raw materials. And in this case, for a pencil, we will require raw wood and raw graphite. What's going to happen after is this wood is likely going to be processed and the graphite is going to be processed by the supplier. Perhaps that's chopping the wood down into finer and thinner pieces. Perhaps that's making the graphite into long cylindrical pieces, perhaps. And what's going to happen next is these materials from the supplier are going to be given to the manufacturer. And the manufacturer is actually going to create said pencil. Perhaps that is inserting the graphite into the wood, perhaps that's painting it, polishing it, putting an eraser on. They're going to create this pencil and they're going to perhaps box it up so that it can be picked up by the distributor. And what the distributor is going to do is they're actually going to distribute this pencil. And what they're going to do and how they're going to do that is likely going to be perhaps on a truck or a train. There are various modes of transportation for distribution, and it is going to be distributed to a retailer or a retail store. So likely it'll be sent to a place like Shoppers, Drug Mart. It could be sent to Staples. It could be sent to Walmart. It could be sent to a small business perhaps. But the goal is to have this product be sold in stores. And finally, the consumer is going to buy the pencil. That is our end goal here in this supply chain, our simplified supply chain of a pencil. I'm going to leave this graphic here on the screen for a quick moment so you're able to refer back to it if you have any questions later on the simplified supply chain of a pencil. Now let's dive in a bit deeper into a very simplified supply chain of the COVID-19 vaccine. As mentioned before, the first thing we always begin with is the raw materials. And the raw materials in the COVID-19 vaccine, we don't expect you to dive too deep into. We know you're not biochemistry majors, and our goal here is just to make it very clear to you that there are raw materials necessary in the supply chain network, but you don't need to know what they are. Next, these raw materials are likely going to be put into a component form. And what that means is these raw materials perhaps have been diluted, they've been purified, they've been prepared so that they are ready for the next step in this process. Other components you may be familiar with are maybe they need syringes or perhaps they need vials to be able to put the vaccine in after. This is all going to happen at the supplier network. And then what's going to happen is all of these supplies and all of these components are going to make their way to the manufacturer. And the manufacturer is going to create this vaccine. There are many different manufacturers, as I'm sure you all are aware, and some of these manufacturers could have one plant or they could have dozens. Once the vaccine has actually been produced, it is going to be distributed. And the distribution network for COVID-19 vaccines is super exciting. There are many modes of transportation, but mostly it is by plane and by truck. And this distribution network is even more interesting because most vaccines need to be held at a very cold temperature. So that's another very cool thing to consider here. And our final goal, once we're done with the distributor, is to have the vaccines arrive at a retailer or at a place of vaccination. So this could be a hospital, this could be a pharmacy, this could be a mass vaccination clinic, as some of you are familiar with. And again, this is all with the final goal of having the consumer receive their vaccine. Here on the screen, you can see all of the different steps laid out if you'd like to refer back to it at a later date. Now, there are a few final things to consider. As I mentioned before, these are really simplified examples, and we do need to consider the fact there are multiple manufacturers. I'm sure many of you can list at least 2 or 3 different manufacturers of the COVID-19 vaccine, but there are also many different manufacturers of all the different supplies. Think about how many different places you can buy wood for a pencil from, or think about how many different manufacturers create pencils. Think about how many different ways you could distribute a pencil, whether that is with FedEx or DHL, whether that is with Canada Post or a completely separate distribution company. And there are also multiple vaccination sites and multiple different places where you can receive your vaccine. So I want to make it very clear to everyone that these are not single issues or places that these things are happening. There's multiple things happening in different places at different times. And I want to ensure you're looking at all of this with a more open-minded view instead of a very narrow way of looking at the COVID-19 vaccine supply chain network. So I thank you all for your time and for watching this video. And I wish you all the best in your integrative project. Thank you.